Of Africans were shipped in cramped, horrific conditions to work on brutal plantations in the Americas, and essentially became property to their masters. For 300 years this practice continued in the British Empire until it was fully abolished in 1833. This
Hi guys,
welcome back again. Today we are going to be checking out history of Britain in 20 minutes. We are so excited for this one, but if you're new on the channel, welcome again, and please always consider to like, subscribe to the channel. So let's get right into today's reaction. IBC's production.
The United Kingdom is a nation located in the British Isles, made up of England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland.
Really?
Sorry, United Kingdom, British were made up of. I was thinking the United Kingdom is just England alone.
Yeah, that's actually my perception
I
of it before.
Scotland and Ireland were part of it.
I think it's like saying the giant of Africa.
Okay.
You understand?
Okay.
Or saying Africa. You know, Africa comprises of every single African nation and stuff like that. I think that's what it means here, though.
Thousands of years ago, the Isles were inhabited by long-forgotten pre-Celtic people, known as the Beaker culture, named for their distinctive pottery beakers.
Wow.
Little is known of them, but it has been suggested that these people laid the foundations for the mysterious Stonehenge. A series of heavy standing stones
I've actually
from 150.
I've actually seen these stones, right? And from every single thing I've seen about the stones, they usually refer to the stones as kind of like let's say this unexplainable phenomenal about the world. Yeah, you understand? Like just like saying the giants did this, the giant did that, and in some movies you see them refer to it as a gate point through another dimension and stuff like that. So now they are saying that it is the Celtic people that actually did this. So it's kind of like it's quite new to me though.
Away, and arranged to form a calendar marking the days of the summer and winter solstice. Over time, waves of Celtic-speaking people arrived from the European continent, who soon came to form the Brittonic, Gaelic and Pictish people.
Okay.
These people were not a unified people, but were rather many tribes who shared a similar pagan religion, language and culture. The Romans invaded, conquering what's now England and Wales, but failed to conquer the Pictish tribes to the north. The Romans launched several campaigns into this land they called Caledonia. However, their fortifications were soon overrun and abandoned, and they retreated to Hadrian's Wall. Their conquered lands were incorporated into the Roman Empire, becoming the province of Britannia. They brought Roman customs and laws, improved infrastructure and connected many towns and cities with Roman roads. When the Romans left, there was a great migration of Germanic tribes. These were the Jutes, Angles and Saxons, with their language Old English. Their settlement pushed many Britons to areas in Wales, Brittany and a kingdom known as Dumnonia, while Scotland eventually evolved into 4 kingdoms. The smallest of these were the Scots, who were originally from Ireland, the Britons of Strathclyde, the Anglo-Saxon kingdom of Bernicia, and the Picts of Alba. For unknown reasons, the Jutes disappeared from history, but the Angles and Saxons eventually formed 7 kingdoms. Wessex, Sussex, Kent, Essex, East Anglia, Mercia, and Bernicia became Northumbria. After the collapse of Dumnonia, the remaining territory of Cornwall fought against
it's very funny seeing how the world seems so perfect right now, forgetting the millions and billions of people that laid foundation to things that we are enjoying right now. I don't know, you understand? It's like back then there was so many devastification, so many religious fight, like you said, pagan and everything, you know, conquering, you know, defending and everything. But right now we think that this perfection just woke up one day and just there was foundation to it. And seeing that actually the you know, every time we blame the what they call it, the European nations about this colonization and everything, it did not start from now. I think at a certain point them themselves was actually, you know, I won't use the word colonized, but they were actually conquered, you know. And I don't know where I'm coming from. Like, so it's not just now something. This has been something that happened way before most of us came into existence.
Our parents at that
against the powerful Kingdom of
Yeah.
Wessex. Cornwall eventually fell under the control of Wessex, but it managed to keep its own culture. Wales at this point was also made up of several separate kingdoms, the largest being Gwynedd in the north, Powys in the east, and Dyfed to the south. The British Isles soon saw numerous Norse raiders from Scandinavia. These were
These
the
are the
Vikings, and they
Vikings.
began settlement
Yeah.
on many of the Scottish Isles, the Isle of Man, and they even founded the city of Dublin in Ireland. The Scots and the Picts then decided to unite under Kenneth MacAlpine to form the Kingdom of Alba. The Kingdom of Alba grew strong over the years, and eventually Strathclyde was brought into the fold. Meanwhile, Danish Vikings arrived in the Anglo-Saxon kingdoms for conquest. After fighting the King of Wessex, Alfred the Great, the Danelaw was formed, a land where the laws of the Danes held influence over the Anglo-Saxons, controlling the region. Anglo-Saxons eventually defeated the last Viking king of York, Eric Bloodaxe, and Athelstan became the first king of the English. Although, the newly formed Kingdom of Denmark would conquer England and even found a short-lived Danish dynasty under Canute. The Norsemen had a dramatic impact on the Isles, so
Advert.
And we're back in third quarter planning. Adams is quarterbacking this project, and she is.
Sorry for that.
so it's no wonder some words in the English language have Norse origin.
In Norse mythology.
After defeating formidable sea raiders from Ireland, the Western Isles, Scandinavia and Anglo-Saxon forces from Mercia, Gruffydd ap Llywelyn subdued his rivals in southwest Wales. Llywelyn became the only Welsh king ever to rule over the entire territory of Wales. He was defeated by the English Earl Harold Godwinson and killed by his own men, leading to the Welsh kingdoms splitting apart once more. At the death of Edward the Confessor, there was a succession dispute between four claimants. Harold Godwinson was elected as king, and managed to defend England from an invasion by the Norwegian king Harald Hardrada. However, Harold had to march his armies south to defend against Duke William of Normandy, who had crossed the English Channel. According to tradition, at the Battle of Hastings, Harold was killed by an arrow to the eye, and the Norman invaders were victorious. The new King William defeated a number of rebellions, built a new design of castles called moat and bailies, and introduced a number of reforms, like trial by combat and the Domesday Book. The Norman dynasty invaded into South Wales and parts of Ireland, creating the Lordship of Ireland. At court, nobles spoke and conducted sessions in the Anglo-Norman language, which endured for centuries and left an incredible mark in development of modern English. After a brief civil war, Henry II would marry Eleanor of Aquitaine, establishing the Angevin Empire, beginning a long rivalry against France. Richard the Lionheart defended much of this territory and also became a central Christian commander during the Third Crusade, achieving considerable victories against his Muslim counterpart, Saladin. Under King John, heavy taxes were imposed on his barons in order to pay for his expensive foreign wars. The barons rebelled and forced John to sign the Magna Carta, a charter that established the principle that everyone was subject to the law, even the king, guaranteeing the rights of individuals, the right to justice, and the right to a fair trial. Most of North Wales remained independently ruled by several Welsh princes until 1216, when Llewellyn the Great became the ruler of the Principality of Wales. This would be the case until Edward I, who conquered Wales in 1284, effectively becoming part of England. At the death of King Alexander III, Scotland was left with 14 rivals for succession.
I think this is now the time I'm recognizing most of the names that he has mentioned. Because most of the times that he has been calling out this name, I was like, I don't know these guys. Like, I know they are a very huge part of history, but I don't really know much about that history. So I was kind of like speechless. But immediately he called Alex. Like, I think there are two significant. I think I recognize a few things there, which is number one, the Vikings. Number two, the Battle of Herringdale. Number three, I think, yeah, that's the Alexander the God. Yeah. So, sorry guys, that's why I've been speechless all this while. I don't really know much of what they are saying. So I'm trying to, like, yeah. Sorry about that. Let's continue, please.
After the war, the Scottish magnates asked Edward I of England to elect a claimant. John Balliol was elected king, but was constantly undermined by Edward, who opposed Scottish independence. Edward decided to launch several campaigns to conquer Scotland and depose King John, to which he acquired the nickname Hammer of the Scots. Under a brave Scottish knight William Wallace, the Scots mounted resistance against the English, defeating them at the Battle of Stirling Bridge. Edward marched north in person and defeated Wallace in battle, but Wallace managed to escape. He was later captured and executed, but his efforts allowed Robert the Bruce to rise up and defeat the English, securing Scottish independence. When the King of France died without an heir, Edward III was technically eligible to the crown, through his mother. The French court denied his claim and instead installed Philip of Valois. Edward paid homage to Philip as he owned the lands of Gascony and was essentially a vassal to the King of France. Due to disagreements, Edward reasserted his claim to the throne and invaded France, beginning the 100 Years' War. The English achieved notable victories at the Battle of Crécy, Poitiers, and Agincourt.
He said 100 years war.
Or is it just a tag, or they actually fought
for 100 years? Do you know the economic disaster that is? The death toll that would take on a country to fight 100. Not like a 10 years war.
Studied to be the dead years, it's like 7 years.
7 years. Then imagine fighting
100.
I feel like all these ones, right, might have been the deadliest, but the fact is that those times there was not actually
missionaries
to record most of these things. Yeah, and again, there was no machinery to actually cause max casualties and everything like that.
Yeah.
But still 100 years war. You know what? You have to finance it. And I forgot to mention, actually, I said there were only like few things I recognize. I remember the Crusaders. Yeah. I don't want that to be struck off. Before you guys say I don't know my history. I know my history a little bit.
I don't know my history.
Thanks to the technical superiority of the longbow, but was unable to conquer the French with the appearance of Joan of Arc, who lifted the French spirit and turned the tide of the war. Upon the death of Edward III, an entire generation was skipped in the line of succession, which prompted bitter rivalry between several claimants. Most notably were the houses of York and Lancaster. Tensions were high until a bloody age of warfare erupted between these two factions in the Wars of the Roses. It's so in-depth and complicated this period will likely become a video of its own. The wars ended with the arrival of the Tudor dynasty, Henry VIII wanting a divorce split with the church creating his own Church of England. This ultimately led to a series of religious differences between future English monarchs. In between his 6 wives and naval adventures, Henry
We splitted with the church.
Yeah, and then... Oh, that's not the history I know, though. Sorry for that.
Gave Wales representation in Parliament and created the Kingdom of Ireland, but realistically he only controlled an area known as the Pale. In addition, Henry's paranoia and suspicion amounted to tens of thousands of executions, including his friends and wives. During the 16th century, the largest and most powerful empire was Spain under King Philip II. England, under Elizabeth I, were helping Dutch rebels reject Spanish rule, and many English privateers were also intercepting Spanish silver on its journey back from the New World. This angered the Spanish king, and the final straw came when Elizabeth had Mary Queen of Scots executed, because she did not want Scotland falling under Catholicism. The Spanish Armada, consisting of 130 ships, was deployed to invade England. At the Battle of Gravelines, an English victory forced the Spanish fleet to sail around the British Isles before storms in the north of Scotland destroyed the remaining ships.
Sorry guys,
in retaliation,
the reason I was laughing actually was because I just recognized that I categorically named Queen Elizabeth, of the Queen of England, in 1588 CE. Because if she was literally alive that period, that means she's not human, she's a vampire. Sorry guys, I thought she was the one. That was why I was like, how? Sorry for that. How is it possible?
The English, led by Sir Francis Drake, amassed their own armada to invade Spain, but this too became a failed endeavour. Born in this period, William Shakespeare became a renowned poet, playwright and actor, who contributed significantly to English literature. When Queen Elizabeth of England died without an heir, her closest male relative was James VI of Scotland. James was elected as King of England and Scotland in a personal union, although the countries remained separate political entities. As the first monarch to rule the entire island of Great Britain, several assassination attempts were made by Catholic conspirators. One such assassination attempt was the gunpowder plot by Guy Fawkes, who tried to blow up Parliament. After a failed colony known as Roanoke, England established a successful colony known as Jamestown, which would eventually evolve into the 13 colonies. At first, expeditions to the New World were mainly driven by religious motives, which were predominantly to convert the natives to their faith. But colonies became more profitable, as demand for New World crops like tobacco and sugar increased. British ships also made a monopoly on the transportation of captive African slaves that crossed the Atlantic to the Americas.
Wow, I think this is when the
So what is ClickUp? ClickUp is an all-in-one productivity software where you can manage everything and anything related to...
An eye-opener. I think, like it says here, their first intention for colonization was not initially for the slavery and everything. It was for religious conversion. Then when they saw that it was being profitable, that was when they now drifted.
Millions of Africans were shipped in cramped, horrific conditions to work on brutal plantations in the Americas, and essentially became property to their masters. For 300 years this practice continued in the British Empire until it was fully abolished in 1833. This period...
You know, we hear slavery, but I never knew it lasted that long. I was thinking it's just maybe a decade something. We're talking about 300 years.
What? I honestly don't know it lasted this long as well, because like you said, I was thinking maybe something about a decade or 2 decades, that's all. 300 years. No wonder some Africans are pissed off.
Yeah.
Like, no wonder the blacks are pissed off in some
like
certain degree.
Centuries, 3 centuries.
Like, what? Nah. See, to be sincere, Europe, you guys have a lot of amending to do. Let's be frank.
They are already been amended.
Yeah, like what I mean is, like, you know, if you watch if you watch some of these black slave, all these things, right? You see most of them are bitter about it, and I never really understood where their bitterness came from, but seeing this 300 years long slavery and all that stuff, a lot needs to be done. For real, a lot needs to be done.
This period also saw a wave of plantations in Ireland, where Irish lands were confiscated and given to English and Scottish settlers. Tensions would rise between Charles I and Parliament. Following disagreements, conflicts between royal and parliamentary authority within England led to the English Civil War. The country became divided between parliamentarians, known as the Roundheads, and royalists, known as the Cavaliers. Under Oliver Cromwell and the New Model Army, the parliamentarians defeated Charles and executed him for treason. Cromwell became Lord Protector and dissolved the monarchy, but shortly after his death it was restored under Charles II. Charles II married Catherine of Braganza, and when she arrived from Portugal she introduced the greatest beverage of all time: tea. Tea had been used by China for centuries, but its arrival in the 17th century captured the interest of the English aristocracy and soon captivated every other Englishman. In 1685, a Catholic James II became king in a largely Protestant nation. James's daughter Mary and her Dutch husband William were both Protestant, and many nobles unhappy with the Catholic king invited William to become king. William found considerable support when he invaded, and he was soon crowned King William III in what became known as the Glorious Revolution. Although William's supporters dominated the government, there remained a significant following for James II in the Scottish Highlands. Clan MacDonald of Glencoe was one such group who had not been prompt in pledging allegiance to the new monarch. For this reason alone, 38 members of the clan were murdered in what became known as the Massacre of Glencoe. After Scotland's failed colonial endeavours in Nova Scotia and Panama, and an economic crisis in the 1690s, there was a union between England and Scotland, forming the United Kingdom of Great Britain. The House of Stuart had ruled Britain for just over a century, but ended with the death of Queen Anne. Sophia of Hanover was the granddaughter of James I, and her son George became king. Great Britain soon found itself drawn into several European wars, most notable being the War of the Spanish Succession and the 7 Years' War. Victories in these wars resulted in territory for the Empire, particularly in North America, although it resulted in considerable debt. In order to make up for this debt, King George III ordered heavy taxes be placed on the 13 colonies. This, among other reasons, culminated into the American War of Independence, and with financial help from France and Spain, the Americans were victorious. The East India Company, which was founded by Elizabeth I, had grown rapidly, and even operated its own military and controlled a sizable amount of territory. The company had set up fortified warehouses where they traded with many Indian rulers, acquiring important luxuries like textiles and spices. One of the most important cities of all was Bengal, as it had a large taxable population. The governor of Bengal, Robert Clive, ordered that the population grow opium to export to China, instead of growing food, as it proved to be a great source of income. However, when a famine struck, it resulted in the deaths of millions of people. Meanwhile, Captain James Cook arrived at New Zealand and the southeast coast of Australia, although he wasn't the first to discover the area because of past Portuguese and Dutch explorers. However, unlike the Dutch and Portuguese, Britain claimed it as their new penal colony, known as New South Wales, with the first convicts arriving in 1778. A new threat had emerged from France, French Emperor Napoleon Bonaparte. Napoleon had come to dominate most of Europe, but Britain's advantage was that she was an island, and the Royal Navy had become a major force at sea. Invasion of Britain was near impossible, and in a series of coalitions Napoleon was defeated. By the end of the Napoleonic Wars, Britain was growing rapidly into a superpower based on their supremacy of naval engineering. Furthermore, in Ireland the Great Famine struck, a disease killing potato plants. Ireland, which had merged with Britain, relied heavily on this crop for food, but the British government forced Ireland to export what little food they had to other areas. Without any aid or food, Ireland's population plummeted by half due to starvation and emigration to countries like the United States. Things weren't looking so great in India either, as India was rebelling against company rule. The East India Company had employed many Indian soldiers known as sepoys, who were under the command of British soldiers. These sepoys grew increasingly unhappy, and a revolt soon occurred, yet it quickly failed due to a lack of unity between Indians. After the rebellion, the British government took direct control, with Queen Victoria being declared Empress of India. During the 19th century, the world was forever changed by the Industrial Revolution. Society was transformed by technological advances and increasing mechanisation, and would launch Britain to global dominance. Some of the greatest innovations and inventions were the sewing machine, the fire extinguisher, steam-powered engines and turbines, the electric motor and photography. The telegraph was also a major invention, as a message could now be sent from Britain to India in a matter of hours. The establishment of railways and trains also transformed transport forever. Instead of travelling days by horse and carriage, it now only took a matter of hours by train. Engineering and communication advances not only united the empire, they triggered a manufacturing boom like no other. People flocked from rural areas to city centres for jobs. Productivity reached an all-time high, but the consequences of mass migration resulted in extremely cramped and polluted cities. However, with these problems that were generated, it resulted in an improved sewage system. Newcastle focused on shipbuilding, Manchester the cotton industry, Liverpool became a major trading centre, Middlesbrough fixated itself on iron and steel works, the presence of iron ore, limestone and large coal deposits in the West Midlands and South East Wales prompted the establishment of ironworks, and Scotland boomed in the linen industry. The Victorian era also saw a major change in society, as families from the poorest backgrounds gained access to education, although it was much stricter than today's standards. The 1860s also saw the rise of the greatest food combination ever, fish and chips. Towards the end of the 19th century, European powers came together at the Berlin Conference to divide Africa between them. A group in South Africa known as the Boers, who were originally Dutch settlers, proved difficult for the British. The Boers lived in two nations, the Free Orange State and the Republic of Transvaal, and both resisted British rule using guerrilla warfare. To counter this, the British placed many women and children in their tens of thousands into concentration camps, where many died from starvation and disease. Britain became a major player in the First World War, and many men proudly volunteered to serve and protect their country. The Great War, as it was called, saw the use of new technology, such as dreadnoughts, warplanes, artillery, machine guns, grenades, chemical weapons, bolt-action rifles, and the first use of the tank. Many faced horrific conditions in the trenches and witnessed gruesome battles. Millions died, and many returned home shell-shocked by what they had seen. The Empire reached its territorial height in 1921 after gaining territory from Germany and the crumbling Ottoman Empire. The Empire now ruled over 400 million people and controlled 1/4 of the world's landmass. But the reality was, Britain could no longer afford to build bases or ships to defend its empire as it had before 1914. Ireland finally managed to break away from British rule.
It's funny because it's just an island.
Yeah, it's just so tiny. But look at the mass things they have done. Like, tiny. Because if you see the map, you will see that they are very, very, very small compared to other.
Like at some certain points, they explored the whole world.
Yeah.
Every
single nation, and I feel like they have actually fought with every single nation before.
Okay, yeah, you've not seen the video. How many nations Britain has conquered? I'm sorry, invaded.
No, I've not seen it.
There's no country in this world that was not in that list.
Like see how they are even moving. From here, I'm hearing India, I'm hearing France.
To me, I feel they are so confident and bold. Because it's one thing to go to a nation, seeing thousands of people and thinking you will come there and dominate, and you certainly do dominate there. It's a lot.
You guys should tell us your secret.
We need that sense of boldness you guys have. Sorry, this stuff is funny. My hands are so tiny.
Very tiny.
Okay, back to the video.
Rule and formed the Irish Free State, and shortly after became a republic.
Okay, 1944. I think we are moving into the World War.
Yeah.
It's time for you to get your reading
That's
super power. So stop straining your eyes and start.
So sorry.
The Second World War was more brutal and horrific than the First. Most of Europe had fallen under German occupation, and under Prime Minister Winston Churchill, Britain stood strong during the Battle of Britain and the Blitz. Britain were extremely successful at intercepting and decoding enemy communications, with the likes of Alan Turing who cracked the German Enigma code. The war ended with an Allied victory, but many nations within the Empire felt a desire for independence, and it was clear the Empire was about to break. India was one such nation who were ready to declare their independence. Mohandas Gandhi practiced a non-violent approach, and this proved successful, as shortly after India gained independence. The Commonwealth of Nations was formed to improve relations and economic ties with former colonies. This still remains today, with 53 members united by language, history, culture, and shared values of democracy. The British Empire officially ended with Hong Kong, Britain's last colony, being handed over to China in 1997. The Empire committed many atrocities on many different people, imposing their culture and civilization while often wiping out native ones. On the other hand, this brought about globalization and the uniting of the modern world. And without such innovations and industrialization, the world might have been a very different place. The United Kingdom suffered a small economic recession in 2008, but has since recovered. It is a multicultural society with each region retaining a presence of its history and culture. If you ever visit, look out for the Welsh cake, the haggis, the whiskey, the Chelsea bun, the parmo, the Cumberland sausage, the Yorkshire pudding, or the Cornish pasty. The UK remains a member of NATO, United Nations and the World Trade Organization, and uses the pound currency. In 2016, a referendum resulted in 51.9% of voters in favour to leave the European Union. Although the countries within the United Kingdom became divided on the matter, leading to the many questions of its future unity. Thank you for watching. Let us know your thoughts in the comments, like, subscribe, follow us on Twitter, support us on Patreon, Have a good one.
You too. Have a good one.
Yeah, and it's so funny. It's not funny actually. It's amusing because history is still rewritten.
Yeah.
Because if the British should leave NATO, sorry, the European nation, because Britain currently is group of country, my own guests. You get like the Scotland,
The
Britain,
Ireland and everything.
Yeah. Wow.
Well, the truth is this: the European nation. When I said, yeah, the European nation has done their own fair share of colonization, but at the same time, I feel like if they haven't done that, we won't have the modernization of the world that we have
Though it
today.
came with a cost.
Yeah, it came with a
A
cost,
very expensive one.
a steep one, for that matter.
Yeah.
Because thinking back at it, being enslaved for 300 years, it's not
That's
funny.
no joke.
It's not funny.
Like 3 centuries, like down.
It's not funny.
Slavery.
And then again, one thing again I had there is, I heard about the guerrilla fight and something warfare, and sometimes we just mention the word war and we forget the impact of it. He says that most of them were left with shell shock of the battlefield. The meaning of what it means is shell. Shell is that
Hard.
huh?
Shell.
No. The shell of, like, let's say a weapon. The shell in which that weapon is shot out of. Like, let me use a gun as an example, right? The bullet itself is encased in a shell. You understand? So shell shock, what they are trying to refer to is this. They are trying to talk about the fact that everyone became like machinery became a nightmare to them.
Yeah.
Like the word, even hearing the sound of metal dropping incites fear. That is what prolonged war does. And that is why in any situation, I always say, let's choose peace over everything. And it's funny how England grew to a superpower. And I felt like it's because of their, unchecked courage. They just want to dominate. They just want to enter there, take it over. And, the first instinct they had was to change people's religion.
Yeah.
And then they saw the benefit. Money can corrupt.
Obviously.
All right, so this was a really nice historical, knowledge. And I feel like I think I know more about England than I did before.
Yeah, me too.
Thank you guys for sticking around to this part. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment on this YouTube channel. Feel free to use our Buy Me Coffee to make priority requests on the next video you'd like to see on this channel. Or you can also support us by using the Patreon link on our description box. See you guys on the next update.
Ciao.